One Piece isn't just about pirates chasing treasure, raiding ships, or fighting marines on the high seas. It's a world of adventure, betrayal, and dreams colliding across the Grand Line. And in this vast, unpredictable world, there are characters so powerful, so iconic, and so legendary that their very names inspire fear and respect everywhere they go. When these giants of the story take action, it's more than just a fight. It's a statement. A reminder of why they stand at the very top. From emperors who dominate the new world, to admirals who enforce justice, and the heroes of the old era whose deeds shaped history. Each one has moments that show the vast gap between ordinary fighters and true legends. And the first to set the tone is the so-called strongest creature alive, who proved it with a single, devastating blow against Luffy. Kaido one-shots Luffy in Gear 4, Raimei Haka. Wano was supposed to be Luffy's proving ground. He had trained, fought through the new world, and faced fearsome enemies like Doflamingo, Cracker, and Katakuri. Each battle had pushed him to new limits, and with Gear 4, he had proven he could stand toe-to-toe with some of the strongest opponents in the seas. So when he came face-to-face with Kaido, the Governor-General of the Beast's pirates, feared across the world as the strongest creature alive, Luffy didn't hesitate. He launched himself into the fight, entering Gear 4, Bound Man, and unleashed a flurry of powerful punches. For a moment, it looked like Kaido might actually feel it. The ground shook, Kaido's massive body was thrown back, and even his subordinates were stunned that someone had managed to hit him that hard. But then came the reality check. Kaido got back up almost unfazed. No real damage, no serious injuries, just anger. And as Luffy charged once again, determined to protect Wano and his friends, Kaido ended it in a single instant. With one swing of his Kanabo club, the Raimei Haka, or Thunder Bagua, Kaido struck Luffy so hard that the fight was over immediately. Gear 4 didn't matter. All the training, all the battles, all the progress, crushed in one devastating blow. Luffy collapsed to the ground unconscious, his crew and allies left in shock. That moment was more than just a defeat. It was a flex. Kaido showed the entire world why he was feared as an emperor. He didn't just beat Luffy, he humiliated him with a single strike, proving the terrifying gap between the next generation and the monsters who already ruled the seas. And if Kaido's overwhelming dominance set the tone for the new era, the next flex took us back to the previous generation, when two titans clashed with such force that even the sky itself couldn't withstand it. Roger versus Whitebeard, sky-splitting hockey clash. Before the age of Luffy, before the Four Emperors, there was a clash that defined what it meant to be a pirate king. Gol D. Roger, the pirate king himself, came face-to-face with Whitebeard, the man called the strongest in the world. Their encounter wasn't just a fight, it was history in motion. Roger charged at Whitebeard with his cutlass, Ace, coated in Conqueror's haki. Whitebeard met him head-on with his massive Naginata, Murakumogiri, his own haki, flaring with equal force. When their weapons collided, the result was unlike anything ordinary pirates could even imagine. The sheer clash of their conqueror's haki split the very sky above them. Clouds parted, the heavens trembled, and the crews of both sides were nearly knocked off their feet by the overwhelming shockwave. What makes this moment so iconic isn't just the power behind their weapons, it's what it represents. Two of the greatest pirates in history, men whose names shaped the very course of the seas, showing that their presence alone could bend the world around them. It wasn't just steel against steel, it was will against will. A flex so immense that even the elements had no choice but to give way. And while the legends of the old era clashed with the power to split the heavens, Another figure would later show that his fists alone could shake the battlefield. Garp's galaxy impact saves Kobe. There are few figures in the world of One Piece who command respect from both pirates and Marines alike, and Monkey D. Garp is one of them. Known as the hero of the Marines, he once fought toe-to-toe with legends like Roger and Whitebeard, but even in his old age, Garp proved that his fists still carried the weight of an era. When Kobe was taken hostage on Pirate Island, Hachinosu, the situation looked grim. Surrounded by Blackbeard's crew, the Marines who came to rescue him were completely outnumbered. Then came the moment no one expected. Garp himself descended from the skies, arriving on the enemy's turf without fear. As he leapt from the ship, the battlefield fell silent for a heartbeat, and then Garp, laughing in his trademark style, clenched his massive fist and declared, "Galaxy Impact." What followed was pure destruction. His punch tore through Hachinosu like a meteor strike, obliterating everything in its path. The ground exploded, shockwaves blasted across the island, and entire sections of the stronghold collapsed under the force of his attack. In that instant, every pirate present understood exactly why Garp had been feared for decades. Age hadn't dulled his fists. They still carried the same devastating force that once rivaled the greatest legends of the seas. And while the hero of the Marines showed what justice looked like in its purest form, another emperor of the sea would soon remind the world that his haki alone was enough to freeze even the boldest admiral in place. Shanks freezes Admiral Greenbull with Conqueror's haki. Not long after the chaos of Wano, the world was still reeling. Kaido and Big Mom had fallen, a power shift that shook the seas. And it didn't take long for the Marines to test the balance of this new era. Admiral Green Bull, Ryokugyu, entered Wano's borders, confident he could handle what was left of the alliance. With his Logia powers, he spread roots across the land, trapping and draining the life out of samurai who stood in his way. His goal was simple: capture Luffy, the new emperor. But just as it seemed like Wano might face yet another devastating battle, a presence from afar silenced everything. Shanks, from miles away on his ship, unleashed his Conqueror's haki. The pressure was so overwhelming that Green Bull froze in place, unable to move forward. Sweat poured down his face, and he knew instantly whose will had reached him. Shanks didn't need to set foot on Wano. He didn't need to lift his sword. His haki alone sent the message: if you want to fight, you'll have to go through me. That single flex spoke volumes. An admiral of the Navy, one of the highest forces of justice in the world, was stopped cold, literally paralyzed, by Shanks's overwhelming willpower. It was proof that Shanks wasn't just a peacekeeper or a negotiator. He was a Yonko whose presence alone could protect a country. And while Shanks's haki froze an admiral in his tracks, another legend of the seas would soon make his own move, not with intimidation, but with raw force. Unleashing a righteous punch straight at one of the Gorosei, Kuma delivers a righteous haki punch to Saturn. The Egghead arc revealed just how dangerous the Gorosei truly are. For the first time, the so-called elders of the world government stepped onto the battlefield, showing power that went far beyond politics. Among them was Saint J. Garcia Saturn, a figure whose very presence radiated menace. With his monstrous form and terrifying abilities, he struck fear into everyone on Egghead. But then came an act no one could have predicted. Bartholomew Kuma, the man once turned into a pacifista and stripped of his free will, suddenly appeared on Egghead, drawn back by his bond with Bonnie. And despite everything that had been done to him, Kuma still carried the spirit of a protector. In a moment that electrified fans around the world, Kuma's towering figure charged straight at Saturn. He raised his massive fist, haki burning around it, and unleashed a punch filled with all the weight of his suffering, his past as a revolutionary, and his love as a father. The impact shook the battlefield. Saturn, one of the highest authorities of the world government, was smashed to the ground by a man the world believed broken and obedient. It wasn't just an attack, it was defiance. A statement that even against the so-called gods of the world, Kuma's will still shone through. And if Kuma's righteous strike proved that even the most oppressed could rise up against the impossible, the next flex takes us back to Marineford, where Whitebeard himself showed the world that he could tilt the very battlefield beneath his feet. Whitebeard tilts Marineford. Marineford was the stage for one of the greatest battles in history. The Marines had gathered their full might, the Shichibukai stood alongside them, and the execution of Ace was moments away. But when Whitebeard finally made his entrance, the entire battlefield was forced to remember why he was called the strongest man in the world. Standing aboard his massive ship, Whitebeard wasted no time. With a single swing of his Basento, coated in the power of the Gura Gura no Mi, he unleashed a quake that split the sea itself. The world government's headquarters, the Navy's pride, shook violently as the ocean heaved under Whitebeard's might. Tsunamis rose higher than the walls of Marineford, towering waves that threatened to swallow the island whole. It was more than just an attack. It was a demonstration. Whitebeard showed everyone watching, from the terrified Marines to the shocked pirates, that even an entire navy couldn't cage him. With his devil fruit, he had the power to tilt the battlefield itself, bending the fight to his will. This was the kind of flex only Whitebeard could pull off. Not just a strike, but a reminder that the sea itself bowed to his strength. And while Whitebeard tilted Marineford with his devastating quake, another force of destruction was preparing to rain down from above, calling forth a storm of meteors made of molten rock, Akainu's meteor volcano, Ryusei Kazan. If Whitebeard's power was enough to shake the earth and seas, Admiral Akainu's fury came from the sky itself. During the height of the Marineford War, when chaos consumed the battlefield, Akainu revealed why he was feared as one of the Navy's ultimate weapons. Raising his fists of magma, he unleashed Ryusei Kazan, the meteor volcano. In an instant, countless molten fists shot into the sky and rained down like fiery meteors. The attack blanketed Marineford, crashing into ships, shattering defenses, and turning the battlefield into an inferno. The sheer scale of destruction forced pirates to scatter and scramble for survival, as the magma obliterated everything it touched. This wasn't just power, it was devastation on a scale that few could match. Akainu made it clear that his brand of absolute justice wasn't about mercy or restraint. He would burn everything that stood in his way. And while Akainu's rage set the skies ablaze, elsewhere in Tadoland, another Yonko showed just how terrifying her own power could be. Through a homie rampage that left nothing but destruction in its path, Prometheus destroys King Bomb, Big Mom's homie rampage. When Big Mom is in a rage, even her own creations aren't safe. The terrifying power of her soul fruit allowed her to create homies, living beings born from fragments of her own soul. Among them was King Bomb, a massive tree who once stood as the lord of the seducing woods. At first, King Bomb reluctantly obeyed Big Mom's orders, but when pressured by Nami's threats, King Bomb reluctantly agreed to help the Straw Hats escape. It was a betrayal that would not go unpunished. As Big Mom's hunger-driven rampage tore across Tado land, her fiery homie Prometheus descended from the skies. With a roar of flames, Prometheus hurled himself at King Bomb, engulfing the enormous tree in fire until nothing remained but smoldering ash. The destruction was brutal and absolute. In seconds, the proud guardian of the forest was reduced to cinders, proving that Big Mom's homies were not loyal companions. They were extensions of her wrath. This was Big Mom's flex, showing the world that even her own creations would be burned away if they dared cross her. The Straw Hats, watching the flames consume King Bomb, could only run, a reminder that Big Mom's power was as unpredictable as it was merciless. And while fire consumed the forest of Tato Land, in Wano another legend was about to strike, delivering a wound that would scar even the so-called strongest creature alive. Odin wounds Kaido for the first time. Before the Straw Hats ever set foot in Wano, there was a man whose name carried the weight of an entire country, Kozuki Odin. A daimyo of Wano, a former member of both Whitebeard's and Roger's crews, and the man who dreamed of opening his land to the world. When Kaido rose to power and began his reign of terror over Wano, Odin was the only one with the strength and the will to challenge him directly. Their battle would become legend, remembered not just for its brutality, but for the one moment when Odin achieved what no one else had done before, wounding the so-called strongest creature alive. As the two clashed, Kaido unleashed the full force of his power, transforming into his massive dragon form, filling the skies with fire and fury. But Odin, armed with his twin blades Enma and Amy no Habakiri, charged forward with everything he had. In one incredible strike, Odin's blades cut deep, leaving Kaido with the massive scar that would mark him for the rest of his life. For a brief moment, Odin stood as the man who had done the impossible. The samurai of Wano saw hope, and even Kaido himself was forced to recognize Odin's strength. But treachery and deception would turn the tide. Odin's victory slipped away, and his sacrifice became the foundation for Wano's suffering, and eventually its salvation. Still, that single slash was a flex unlike any other, proof that even Kaido could bleed. And while Odin's blades carved history into Kaido's flesh, another red-haired figure would later step into Marineford to end a war with nothing but his presence. Shanks stops the war, Marineford. The Battle of Marineford was chaos incarnate. Admirals, warlords, Yonko commanders, and Marines all clashing in one of the bloodiest wars of the Great Pirate era. Whitebeard had fallen, Ace had been executed, and the battlefield was drowning in violence. It seemed like the war would never stop. But then, silence fell as a new presence shook Marineford. In the middle of the chaos, a single figure stepped forward, stopping Akainu's attack with one strike. Red-haired Shanks had arrived. Without lifting his sword, without throwing a single punch, Shanks walked straight into the center of Marineford. His crew flanked him, and every fighter present, Marines, pirates, even the warlords, froze in place. Shanks raised his voice, declaring that the fighting would end here. His presence alone was enough to halt the bloodshed. Sengoku, the fleet admiral of the Marines, looked across the battlefield, weighed the losses, and finally agreed. The war was over, because Shanks said so. This was Shanks' ultimate flex. He didn't need to fight to prove his strength. His reputation, his willpower, and his sheer presence commanded respect from both sides of the world's greatest battle. And while Shanks ended the war at Marineford with nothing more than his presence, elsewhere another Yonko would make his introduction, crashing down from the heavens like a living disaster. Kaido's Skyfall entrance. The world already feared the name Kaido, but his first true appearance showed exactly why he was called the strongest creature alive. While the Kidapu-Hawkins alliance plotted their next move against the Yonko, the skies above them began to tremble. Out of nowhere, a distant shadow pierced the clouds, growing larger and larger until it became impossible to ignore. And then, it fell. Kaido plummeted from Skypiea, a sky island thousands of meters above the surface, his colossal frame crashing down like a meteor. The impact shook the earth itself, carving a massive crater into the land and sending shockwaves that ripped through the surrounding area. Dust and debris filled the air, and for a moment, silence swallowed the battlefield. When the smoke cleared, there he stood. Kaido, unscathed, towering, and radiating an aura of unstoppable dominance. His body bore countless scars from battles past, yet the fall hadn't left so much as a scratch. Every pirate watching froze in place, their plans shattered, their courage fading beneath the crushing weight of his presence. It wasn't just an entrance, it was a warning. Kaido wasn't a man to negotiate with. He was a force of destruction, and from that moment forward, everyone on the seas understood one simple truth. Where Kaido walked, chaos followed. And while Kaido's fall from the heavens shook the world, back at Marineford, another legend revealed his power in a very different way, through the overwhelming shockwave of a golden Buddha. Sengoku's Buddha form shockwave. As the war at Marineford raged, the world saw not only the terrifying might of pirates and admirals, but also the power of the fleet admiral himself. Sengoku, the man who commanded the entire navy, revealed a strength that few had ever witnessed. When Luffy and his allies stormed the execution platform in a desperate attempt to save Ace, Sengoku finally decided to act. His body began to glow with golden light, transforming into the massive form of the Daibutsu, the legendary Golden Buddha. Towering above the battlefield, Sengoku unleashed a shockwave of raw power. The air itself seemed to shatter as the golden giant struck, sending Luffy and his allies flying and shaking the very platform where Ace was chained. The first time the world saw the full might of the fleet admiral, Sengoku wasn't just a strategist or a commander. He was a warrior whose strength stood shoulder to shoulder with the greatest figures of his era. His Buddha form was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a symbol of the Navy's resolve to crush anyone who defied them. And while Sengoku's golden form shook the battlefield with divine force, on that same stage another legend showed his power with the simplest of tools, a sword swing that could split icebergs in half. Mihawk's iceberg-splitting slash. At Marineford, every fighter was proving why they belonged on the battlefield of legends, but for some, a single move was enough to remind the world of their unrivaled skill. For Dracul Mihawk, the greatest swordsman in the world, that moment came early in the war. As the pirates advanced, Mihawk decided to test the waters. Calm and composed, he raised Yoru, his massive black blade, and unleashed a single flying slash aimed straight at Whitebeard. The attack cut through everything in its path, splitting a massive iceberg in two as it tore across the battlefield. The sheer force of the slash stunned Marines and pirates alike, reminding everyone that Mihawk's swordsmanship was on a level all its own. Though Jozu, Whitebeard's diamond-bodied commander, managed to intercept the strike, the message had already been sent. Mihawk wasn't fighting for chaos or glory. He was simply demonstrating the terrifying reach of his blade. One effortless swing, and the battlefield itself was reshaped. That was Mihawk's flex, proving that in the art of the sword, there was no equal. And while Mihawk's slash split icebergs with frightening ease, another legend soon showed that even the speed of light could be stopped, if only for a moment. Rayleigh blocks Kizaru's laser strike. Long before Luffy and his crew reached Marineford, Another legendary figure reminded the world that the old era hadn't disappeared just yet. On the Sabaody archipelago, the Straw Hats were hopelessly outmatched against a marine admiral, until the Dark King himself stepped in. When Kizaru appeared to capture the crew, his overwhelming light-speed attacks left the Straw Hats completely defenseless. In an instant, he prepared to finish them off with a deadly laser strike. But before the blow could land, a single blade intercepted it. Silver's Rayleigh, former first mate of the Pirate King Gul D. Roger, had arrived. With nothing but a sword in hand, he blocked the Admiral's attack head-on, stopping Light itself in its tracks. The shock on Kizaru's face said everything. This wasn't just a lucky save, it was proof that even after decades in hiding, the Dark King was still a force to be reckoned with. In that moment, Rayleigh reminded everyone watching that legends don't fade with time. And while Rayleigh's blade stopped a beam of light, another admiral would soon demonstrate a flex of his own, one that turned the very ocean into an endless sheet of ice. Aokiji freezes the sea, creates a path with ice. The admirals of the Navy are known for powers that can shape the battlefield itself, but few moments display that better than Aokiji's casual show of strength at Long Ring Long Land. When the Straw Hats encountered him, Aokiji seemed lazy, almost harmless. But in an instant, he revealed just how terrifying the power of the ice fruit truly was. With a wave of his hand, he froze the sea itself, stretching ice across the ocean as far as the eye could see. What made this moment so striking wasn't just the scale of his ability, it was the effortlessness. No battle, no struggle, just a simple demonstration that turned a limitless ocean into solid ground. Aokiji created an ice path across the waves as if it were nothing, a reminder that for admirals, bending nature itself was part of their arsenal. It was a quiet flex, but one that carried weight. In that instant, the Straw Hats and the audience understood that they were standing before a man whose power belonged to a different league entirely. From Kaido's crushing Raimi Haka to Shanks freezing an admiral with nothing but his haki, from Whitebeard tilting the seas to Garp shaking an entire island with one fist. These are the moments when the legends of One Piece reminded the world why they stand at the very top. Each of them flexed in their own way, through raw strength, overwhelming haki, or simply the weight of their presence. And together, they've carved scenes that fans will never forget. If these legendary flexes gave you chills, then you're going to love what's next. Check out our video about One Piece moments that fill your heart with hope. The scenes that remind us why this story is more than just battles. And if you're all about overwhelming presence, don't miss Aura Entrances in One Piece, where we relive the times a single character's arrival changed everything.